Welcome everyone to our regularly scheduled Stakeholder Advisory Committee meeting for Region 7. My name is Leo Wilson. I'm the chair of this committee, and I'm going to call the meeting to order. So today's agenda includes some presentations from some outside groups to talk to us about issues related to transportation and traffic. And we also have a guest who's part of the group that reviewed the Forest Drive sector study. So, and had comments on that. That's Bill Reichert, and he'll be in here. He's a presenter later this morning. And also, we're going to hear from Desiree with some background information on traffic, I believe. Is that right, Desiree?
I'll be talking about land use and sort of how it ties to transportation.
Yeah, okay, great. So that's a brief review of the agenda. Is there anything here we want to add to that discussion, Patrick?
No, I think we should be good.
Okay, great. So as we do for all of these meetings, the public is invited to join us for part or all of the presentation, and it's recorded, so it's available for people to come back and look at later. But this is the time in the meeting where we ask for anyone from the public, if they'd like to have an opportunity to make a statement or ask a question or a comment. We're going to go ahead and open that up to them now. And I'm just going to remind them that we'd like to keep these brief, and we'll always take written testimony, and the address that you should submit that to is on the screen as well. So at this point, are there any comments from the public? And I'll look for hands in the chat. I don't see any. Do you see any, Patrick?
I don't see any.
Okay, great.
I will note too, just for the record, Jonathan Hollander is in here as an attendee, and I'm trying to promote him to a panelist. So Jonathan, I'm sure, oh, there you go. So I think he's coming through now.
Okay, great. What this means to me is that we don't have any comments today from the public, and so we're going to close that part of the meeting, and just remind everyone that certainly we're anxious to have people contribute and participate in the process, and so if they'd like to do so, this is a nice opportunity to do it, and we will take a written comment as well. So next item is approval of the prior meeting notes. I know those went out, I believe, yesterday afternoon, if I'm not mistaken. And so I wanted to find out if everyone has had a chance to review those notes. And if they have, if there's a motion to approve them, but we'll start with, were there any proposed modifications to the notes as proffered? Okay, so I don't see anything there. So now I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes as they were recorded.
So moved.
Second. Okay, so it
Who gave us the second? Who was that made the second?
I'm not sure, but I'll do it.
I think it was Troy.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to assume, since we've got a first and a second and there was no changes to the notes, they're approved as submitted. So they'll go into the public record, and that will take care of that. And then there's a reminder on our list here to the signed charters. Patrick, you want to talk about that?
We've gotten most of them. There are two that are outstanding, and thanks to everybody who has sent those in. So I think we're very close on that.
Okay, great. And how about our trainings, Patrick? Has everyone come up to date with our open meetings training and the ethics training?
Yeah, there are a few that still need to complete the open meetings training, and I think that there is one outstanding ethics certificate, and I've reached out to those folks as well. So
okay, great. Great. So if that's all holding up the way it should, that's terrific. And it just keeps our records clean. I will say that we haven't formalized the appointments for, I think I served as vice chair under Tony, and then Tony's had a change, so I've stepped into the chair position under appointment from county executive, and he has not appointed our vice chair yet, but that's probably coming up in the next few weeks. So we'll keep you posted on who that is as soon as we hear from him and he's formalized that. It could be even later this week.
Leo, can I ask a question? You just said Tony stepped down from chair.
Yes. Patrick, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, well, and Tony is on the call with us as well. But Tony had reached out to us and just indicated that he would like to step aside as chair, but remain on the committee. And so hence Leo has moved up into the chair role, and we are looking to we've been in contact with the county executive to appoint a vice chair from among folks on this committee. And so I know that the executive has some thoughts on that and should be reaching out to somebody very shortly if he has not already.
And this is Tony. I want to thank Leo for stepping up. I've had to step back for some personal reasons and some medical reasons. And so I just want to thank you all for your cooperation, all the help everyone's given me when I was chair, for Patrick, you understanding, the county executive understanding, and now appointing Leo so we can move forward still.
Any other questions about that topic? Okay, great.
I would just say thank you to Tony, though, for serving through the first few months of this and for continuing to be a part of this. We really appreciate your input.
Sure enough. Great.
So I think what I'd like to move into now is if Desiree, you want to talk about transportation and land use, your presentation for that?
Sure, I'm ready.
Great.
Okay, so yeah, as a kind of precursor to our transportation presentations we have today, we just wanted to give a little background on land use and the various policies and regulatory tools we have to influence land use in the county. So we can start kind of broadly here, just starting with the state of Maryland. And there was a planning visions law that was passed in 2009, which created 12 visions to reflect the state's ongoing aspiration for sound growth and development policy. And these visions address everything from quality of life to sustainability, public participation processes, establishing growth areas, infrastructure, etc. So local jurisdictions are required to include these visions in their comprehensive plans and then implement them through their zoning ordinance and other regulations. So Plan 2040, our general development plan, aligned with these state of Maryland's 12 visions. And if you're interested in knowing exactly how page 21 in Plan 2040 specifically calls out where each of these visions are implemented in the plan. So if you want to look a little bit more into that, that's where you would find it. But this really sets the stage for the county's growth and development policies. So there are kind of three primary tools that we use for implementing smart growth and land use policies. The first being the development policy areas. And we've talked about this a little bit, but just want to dive in a little bit more on what these are. And it's the development policy areas broadly define areas where development and redevelopment are encouraged, where preservation of like rural character or natural features are prioritized. And it kind of sets the framework for how the county would like to grow and which areas will accommodate growth. And which areas may not change that much from here on out. So planned land use takes that kind of to the next step, and it establishes, it takes kind of the visions, goals, and policies and the development policy areas and really designates land use categories that represent certain development types. So low density residential, high density residential, commercial, industrial, but these are still pretty broad categories. And then zoning is the third piece, and that's really the implementation tool. It's the regulatory tool that allows us to say, you know, this is exactly what is permitted or not permitted on a parcel, on a site, and it regulates everything from, you know, parking and setbacks, and it's really the tool for implementation. So this is the development policy areas for Region 7. And as I mentioned, this map really guides kind of the location and type of development and where we're prioritizing, you know, certain types of either growth or conservation or maybe neighborhood preservation. And it really helps guide investments in public services and infrastructure, and provides a logical framework for implementing the goals, policies, and strategies that we established in our general development plan. So looking at Region 7, we have 4 primary development policy areas and 1 overlay. A large part of the region is obviously in the city's jurisdiction, so are not included in our policy area. So that'd be obviously the gray part. But as you can see, the neighborhood preservation makes up the largest part of Region 7, followed by the peninsula area shown in blue. And that's down in, you know, the Bay Ridge, Arundel on the Bay, Hillsmere, Berry Point Road. So those neighborhoods kind of make up the peninsula area. And then the town center area, which is obviously the Parole Town Center. And then a very small area of critical corridor on the north side of Maryland Route 2, the South River Bridge, north side of the South River Bridge there. We also have the transit-oriented overlay in the Parole Town Center, which are kind of centered on the park and ride on Harry Truman, and then the future multimodal transportation center at Westfield Mall. So I just want to kind of go over these definitions and what makes up these specific policy areas. So for neighborhood preservation, we would expect that these are existing residential communities and natural areas. I mean, it can include commercial and industrial uses, but these areas are not intended for substantial growth or land use change. They may have specific areas targeted for revitalization, but development is limited to, we would expect that development be limited to sort of infill development, the addition of accessory dwelling units, redevelopment that's compatible with the existing neighborhood, and public infrastructure largely already exists. There may be capacity improvements that need to be made or maintenance that needs to be made, but generally public infrastructure already exists in these areas. The peninsula areas are existing primarily residential communities that are sort of constrained or are surrounded by water and are served typically by a single primary road corridor for access. And these areas are located both within and outside of the priority funding area in the public sewer service area. So development is primarily limited to infill and redevelopment that should be compatible with existing character of the neighborhood. And also where we would strongly consider, you know, impacts of sea level rise and saltwater intrusion in what's acceptable and suitable land use for these neighborhoods. The town center areas are more compact and walkable, pedestrian oriented, higher density areas that are within the priority funding area. It's kind of the most urban areas of the county, and development, redevelopment, and revitalization are, you know, encouraged. And that's to take advantage of existing infrastructure that's there. And so typically these areas are, implementation of these areas are guided by a town center master plan. So for example, the parole town center master plan for our town center. And then critical corridor are areas where there's existing developed areas along major roads where opportunities to improve safety and mobility exist. These areas often form an economic center of a community, and redevelopment that improves multimodal outcomes and preserves adjacent neighborhoods is encouraged. And then lastly, the transit-oriented areas are compact, walkable, pedestrian-oriented, typically mixed-use areas that are within a transit center, so within a half-mile radius of a transit center or a planned transit station. So all of these areas are also within the priority funding area. So I know that was a lot, but just kind of to dive in, it really starts to shape how we think about what types of development are appropriate for these areas. And through Plan 2040, we went through the entire county and designated areas for within this policy area framework. So next, this is the planned land use map. And as I mentioned, this really is based on the vision, goals, policies, and then taking the next development policy area is kind of the next step. And this is where we designate areas with land use categories that represent development types. So, and this builds on kind of the fundamental principles of land use planning in Anne Arundel County, and that's protecting our environmental features, protecting rural character and our agricultural economy, and then managing the development and physical character of our more suburban areas, and then focusing more intensive development in our town centers and critical economic areas and transit-oriented development areas. And the planned land use map, like I said, is implemented through zoning. I know I don't have a legend on this map, but there's so many different zones, so it's kind of hard to show here, but generally the yellows are residential, the green is rural or agriculture or open space, the purples are town center, so you kind of get a sense of how this aligns with the planned land use map. And so the zoning map and the corresponding regulations found in Article 18 of the County Code are really the tool that allow us to implement the planned land use map by regulating the development. And so it's more specific than planned land use and provides provisions for to establish regulations such as permitted uses, maximum density, setbacks, structure height and coverage on the lot, minimum lot size and setbacks, and then required parking. And so the state requires that the zoning map be consistent with the planned land use map. So let me just go over a couple examples of how planned land use would translate to zoning, and then what the permitted or anticipated uses would be. So this.
Hey, Desiree, is it possible I could ask a question?
Sure, sorry, I'm just rolling through here. Yeah.
Do you have, of the last two that you showed, do you have an overlay map so that where you could see where are there any differences between kind of planned development versus current zoning?
Yeah, we don't have them laid on, well, actually you could really probably lay them on top of each other on the hub site. These maps, I actually just took screenshots from the hub site, and we have we've posted some of our existing conditions maps, which is just sort of a data dump of all of our data on the hub site, and you can find both planned land use and zoning, and that you can find all of these maps on the hub site under the existing conditions.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, they're the same kind of general scale to be able to just kind of do that. Okay, yep. Thank you.
And you can zoom in and out, and they're, yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
And Desiree Kristen King, good morning. Just a quick
Sure.
question for you. You briefly talked about something at the Annapolis Mall. Can you expand on that?
Sure. Yeah, that was in reference to the multimodal transit center that's planned for the Westfield Mall. And I'm sure Brian Ulrich will talk a little bit more about that in his presentation. If not, we can, yeah, okay. Yeah,
Sounds
so we'll
good.
get into
Thank you.
that a little bit more. Any other questions right now, or? Okay. So just to tie this all together, I'll go through a couple examples here. And this is an example of high density residential. So where something would be designated high density residential on the map for the planned land use map, that would correspond with typically an R15 or R22 zone. And what we would anticipate would actually get developed in an R15 or R22 zone would look something like this. It would be an apartment building. It would be, either a walk-up garden style or a taller apartment building with an elevator. It could be condominium units, but it could be a standalone building, or it could be incorporated into a larger planned development with a mix of apartment buildings and townhouses. Another, just a second example would be, this is when looking at a mixed use plan land use designation that would correspond with the MXD zone. And these are sort of the types of developments we would expect in an MXD zone. It's kind of a combination of different uses in one building, typically residential over retail or office on the first floor. And this type of development it's commonly seen in downtown Annapolis, where there's downtowns, that more historic downtowns tend to have a lot of mixed use. Modern versions of this development type may not always be in one building too. So it's really like with Euclidean zoning or single use zoning, it's made this development type more rare, and especially in Anne Arundel County it's rare. In most suburban areas it's pretty rare, but we have seen this type of development be successful in the redevelopment of former strip malls or near transit stations. It's a way to sort of foster a complete community with homes and access to services all close together. So okay, and then this is my last slide here. Just you may wonder, how does this relate to transportation? And I think we all know there's limited access to safe, accessible walking and biking transit alternatives. And given the amount of suburban development in the county, we are all very reliant on our cars. And, most of us commute to work alone in our personal cars. And this has sort of resulted in a lot of traffic, more distance traveled, more trips made for work and recreational activities. So as we're going into these transportation discussions, we really want to think about how can we align land use and transportation so that we can reduce traffic congestion, and we can sort of create nodes for people to live and play and work and all in the same area, and sort of reduce our dependency on automobile use. So just kind of wanted to prime you with this land use discussion as we go into our next speakers. So at this, if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to pause here, but otherwise I will hand it back to Leo to introduce our transportation presenters.
Hey, Desiree.
Sure.
I've got a quick, John Hogg, quick question. Do you mind just showing, because I went through the transportation documents you sent, and thank you very much for that, very helpful. Can you go back to the land use maps and just point again to where like those larger development areas could be to help us understand this is why we need to increase transportation alternatives, just to specifically point them out. There's just so much here. It's a little hard to quickly recognize that.
Sure. So yeah, this, for example, this purple color, this town center area.
Yeah, so Parole, yeah, I got it.
Yeah,
Parole
so
Shopping
that
Center.
that would be, you know, kind of in our region is really the area where we're saying this should be higher density, compact, walkable development. We do have even some, you know, residential high density here. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but in this darker maroon color. And then sort of medium density is representing like, you know, more kind of duplex or kind of a transitional like townhomes or duplex style. So this is really the main area. I mean, there's obviously the city has much more, I would say, areas that are targeted for more compact growth, but within the county portion of the region, this is really the area that we see as being the kind of growth area and more compact.
Okay, so that's where we can add density. Understood. Okay, yep. That's helpful.
Okay, this is Tony Spencer. I do have a question. Back when Governor Glendenny and I think the county executive first came on board, they had a day's conference out to the DoubleTree Hotel. So when these different regions finish their studies and bring them all together, how will this tie into what they're talking about as far as a state regional transportation system? We have people who are educated in Annapolis who can't get to the northern part of the county or western part for jobs. So how's this all going to tie in? Is that a bigger question for later or another time?
Yeah, Tony, I think that's something that our transportation folks will be talking a little bit about in their presentations.
Okay.
And if I can recommend that we pause on some of the questions, we can come back to questions for Desiree. I do want to give Bill Reichert a chance to speak because I know that he needs to leave a little bit early today, and I wanted to let him talk a little bit, if we could, about his work with the Forest Drive Task Force. Bill, are you still with us?
Yes.
Okay,
with you.
Let me let you get started, and we can circle back to Desiree's before moving into some of the other presentations.
Sure, happy to do it.
Thank you, Bill.
I will stop sharing and do you have, I don't know if you have something to present, Bill, or if you're just talking, but I'm going to stop sharing and then.
I don't have slides with me today, and if you want to keep that map up, that's fine with me.
Well, I'll put it down just so we can all see each other more.
Sure. Okay. Good morning. My name is Bill Reichert, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about my experience as the chairman of the Forest Drive Eastport Sector Study Task Force, tell you how that task force was formed, what it did, some of the key findings there. Since that effort, that report was submitted to the city and shared with the county over a year ago. So it's online, and if you're having trouble getting to sleep at night, I suggest you go through all of it. But there are some synopses that I think are quite telling. Since then, I am the president of the Eastport Civic Association and have been involved in the last year and going forward with a lot of not only development, but transportation and mobility issues in Eastport. I'll touch on that briefly because what we're dealing with here now is, in a sense, the microcosm of is playing out in a variety of forms based on some of the issues that we saw in the task force. So in 2018, the City Council in the city of Annapolis passed a resolution that formed the Forest Drive Eastport Sector Study Task Force. That was a result of an argument made by citizens groups and others in the city of Annapolis that the sector study that was done, Forest Drive Sector Study, was simply not adequate to describe some of the more particular problems, at least some citizens were seeing. And so the City Council agreed to take a look at that and review that sector study in more detail and make further recommendations. The task force was composed of 21 people, and I want to tell you that one of the best things that came out of that effort was, and I was told it was really for the first time, that citizens from the city, the county, representatives from the state, the city and the county, both planners and traffic experts, met together to identify problems, to identify some priorities, and to see if we could make some joint recommendations. So when you look at this report, it really was the effort of multi-agency and citizen cooperation. And the reason I want to mention that today is that that particular element of citizen participation with the planners at the table, looking at the same thing, sharing experiences, sharing information, sharing realities in terms of how things work, we found to be extremely useful. And so one of the recommendations was to keep that going in some form. We don't know that it is, but that was the highest recommendation we had. The Forest Drive area, as you all well know, presents some really unique problems, and it did for us. At the time we looked at it, over 40,000 vehicle transits per day commuted up and down Forest Drive. The gentleman who mentioned a few minutes ago that you know, the issue of people trying to get to work, particularly on public transportation, was a real challenge, and that continues to be a major challenge for mobility, not only along that Forest Drive corridor, but certainly in the Eastport Peninsula, trying to get people to work, to grocery stores, things like that, from the standpoint of general mobility. Forest Drive cuts through 5 wards in the city of Annapolis. And all of those wards were represented. Before I get into some of the details, some of the general observations were that, and this is from the Annapolis point of view, would really not become a bicycle-dominated community because of employment patterns now in the future. The shorthand, there's a lot of emphasis on different modes of mobility. We're going through that right now with elimination of parking alternatives in the city of Annapolis. I'll touch on that. But from the standpoint of mobility, we do not see, you know, bicycle use as being an employment alternative, for example, or a way to get to work. It would be nice if it was. Very few people are going to be doing that. So let me switch for just a minute to my notes on the report itself. Okay. So in the sector study, we looked at issues related to development, but in the area of transit and transportation, it was in section C of our report, which talked about adequate public facilities and services, particularly traffic and transit. And the first recommendation of this group was to update and modify the existing traffic adequate public facilities regulations and mitigation requirements. And again, this focused on the city of Annapolis primarily. We are in the process of doing that. We found that our city code, as it related to the standards for adequate public facilities for traffic and mobility simply do not address adequately now a number of the problems that we are looking at. And some of the metrics, for example, LOS evaluations are starting to be phased out as we understand it, and to be replaced by more realistic measurements of mobility and traffic and moving people through a city, through an urban environment. So updating and modifying those regulations is important. And I would say that another theme of this task group was to recognize that they're probably, from our perspective, let me put it that way, and particularly from the citizens' perspective, there was not historically planning coordination between the city and the county to the degree that we would like to see it. And part of the recommendation was that that improve. And that's critical. And let me give you an example of that. One of the recommendations of this task force was to use a traffic light system, for lack of a better term, that was a smart system that could actually, in layman's terms, talk to the signals and equipment used by the county on the Forest Drive corridor, which we learned does not now occur to an adequate degree. So in other words, the city of Annapolis's traffic lights don't talk to the county. And that's an upgrade. It's a technology upgrade. It was a recommendation for us from the task force, but it clearly requires not only planning and engineering coordination between the county and the city, but in the development of the CIPs for both the city and the county, those elements, those coordinated elements need to be taken into consideration. Bus service from the city to the county. Somebody told me the other day that 40% of the bus routes that run through the city and serve city residents, 40% of those stops are in the county, which is fine. But what that's an illustration of is the need, in our opinion, for a regional bus service, in the sense that the city and the county are cooperating in terms of mobility options for people to get out of the city, to get to a job in the county, and to get home. I've invited city leaders, if you really want to understand this problem on a microcosmic level, try taking a public bus from Bay Ridge Avenue in the city of Annapolis to get to the hospital, or to get to a grocery store, or a store or a dentist's office somewhere north within the county. That's a real challenge. And you won't do it on one bus, that's a certainty. So the implementation of smart traffic signals, the coordination, and we listed in the task force report essentially 9 areas specifically, Spa Road and Hilltop Lane, for example, and very specific intersections where those smart lights could really be of help. So synchronizing that system, planning together with the county is important. I mentioned briefly to establish a commuter transit bus line that can tie to existing and future regional routes. Now, one underlying current of the thinking in the task force was the question of planning for transportation, but looking at your current infrastructure, looking at your planned development, but looking at your current infrastructure. In the city of Annapolis, our experience has been to some degree to look at modification of planning modes, for example, infill development, mixed use, less than 3% of the land area in the city of Annapolis is even available for new development, which is, so what we're really looking at here in the city is infill. We are looking at, in the limited space that we have, with the added complications of the peninsular environment, factors such as maritime zones, which protect marine, commercial use and so forth. There's just not a lot of room. There's not a room to grow, but there are forces at play that are saying, let's get rid of parking lots. Let's expand green space. Let's expand our mobility through the use of everything from electric scooters to electric buses. This is all now coming out to play within the city of Annapolis. And it is creating challenges. Let me mention to you, just in terms of, I'm going to go back to this theme of citizen participation. In the microcosm of Eastport, when we're talking about mobility and we're talking about transportation and the challenges that we have, we formed with the Business Association, the Civic Association and the Business Association in Eastport recently formed the Parking and Mobility Working Group. And that working group just submitted its interim recommendations to the City Council, Planning Commission, and so forth. It deals with questions of eliminating parking requirements for the certification, for example, of restaurants or bars in Eastport. It deals with the possibility of paid parking zones. But the point is that it was another example of where citizen and business and city liaison actually worked to come up with some incremental, on the ground, realistic next step changes. So I want to pass that along because preserving that element, at least we think, is instrumental. So I'm going to stop now and ask if there are any questions. Thank you, Patrick, for letting me come on. I know I'm just touching on a number of things that you all are working on over time. Commend your work. Leo, good to see you. I haven't seen you either on video or in person for a while.
Oh, good to see you as well.
I think I owe you lunch. I'm not sure.
That may be true. That may be true. Well, thanks for taking the time to walk us through the work that your group has done, and I'm sure we'll be talking with you again as we get through the remainder of the information we're trying to digest and to come back with our recommendations. So appreciate your time, and if there's any follow-up questions from our group, they'll direct them to Patrick and Desiree and get them back over to you.
Great. Okay. Thank you, folks.
Great. Thanks for making time.
Thank you.
So Patrick, I just wanted to go back as we're stepping into the next piece of this. I'm going to try and keep us moving, but first off, Desiree, thanks so much for walking us through the information that you presented. I think it's really, it's important to understand that all of these things are intended to support the role of our group. And at the bottom of the page on the agenda, it's kind of what we're tasked with doing is to play a key supporting role in providing input and assistance in examining community challenges like transportation and figuring out where to put these systems in place so we can support healthier communities and make our community a better place to live. So preparation of goals and strategies to implement the regional vision and recommending changes in zoning. And again, it all ties into what Desiree was walking us through, where There are places where we would be a better community if we supported growth that works with all of these systems together. And if we limited growth to areas where maybe it doesn't make sense to try and provide those services. So transportation is a big part of that. And I appreciate you walking us through how that all ties together. And with that, I think we wanted to move into our next presenter, and we're just a little bit behind.
Yeah, Leo, we did have a quick question, if I can highlight that from Jonathan, who asked, what's the main takeaway from Bill's presentation? And if I can talk just very briefly to try to kind of put a bow on that. The task force that Bill chaired, I was a part of that task force. Lily was also a part of the task force, and we also have in the wings Martha Arzu McIntosh, who was a part of that that task force as well. And the role of the task force was really to review. It was a not a corridor study, a sector study that was put together by the city for Eastport and Forest Drive. And a number of the recommendations that came out of that study, there were some there were citizen groups that had some concerns about some of the recommendations. And so that was what Bill was trying to highlight, what that the task force was formed to take a closer look at the city's study for that that area, and then make some recommendations that would ultimately strengthen the city's sector study for the Eastport and Forest Drive area. Ultimately, that sector study was not adopted by the city, but I do think a lot of the recommendations that are relevant are being folded into the city's comprehensive plan that is underway now. And I think later this summer, we should be expecting a draft of the city's comprehensive plan. So a lot of moving pieces, but I had sent to you all the information that had been prepared by that task force. And so that is something, if you want to take a look at their main recommendations, they do mostly apply to well, there are a lot of recommendations that apply very specifically to the city. And so those will not really be as relevant to our work, but there are a lot of recommendations that are relevant for the county as well. So take a look at that and be thinking about that maybe as we move forward. So hopefully that sort of ties that up and brings that into a little bit of perspective as we move forward here.
Yeah, I think that's helpful, Patrick. Thanks for doing it. And Jonathan, I'm sorry I didn't see your chat until Patrick started to tell me about it. So
it just seemed that he pretty much dismissed the idea for bicycles to provide any real volume of transportation solution, and for buses to really work. So for our work on our side, I recognize that Forest Drive and Eastport and that part of Annapolis is different, but I guess the general point is, hey, we don't want to rely, that community does not want to rely on those two solutions.
Yeah, I mean, that may be the case for them. Again, this is just one small snippet of all the information that our group needs to take in. And it's very focused on Forest Drive and its interaction with the Eastport community, and Bill's role as the Eastport Civic Association's president shows how closely those two groups are aligned to make sure that things work for that particular group. And it's good for us to know that information, but we're working kind of at a little higher level, I think, in terms of the whole region. That's just one small piece. It's important, but we'll have to dissect all of that information when we start to get past our presentations and into our own kind of working sessions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note too that the task force was there was a memorandum of understanding between the city and the county to help put that together. But I think that the city, county, and state staff that were involved with that helped serve more as kind of a technical advisory role in that, and so the task force was really to amplify the citizen voice, and so hopefully that is what came through with those recommendations. So do take a look.
Thanks.
So Patrick, why don't we move into our traffic engineering presentation by Nestor? Would that be good?
Yeah, I think so. And Nestor, if I remember correctly, you wanted us to share our screen with your presentation. Is that correct?
That would be best. I just don't want to gamble with my Wi-Fi connection.
Okay. So Desiree has your presentation up, and we'll let you take it away.
Perfect. Thank you, Patrick, and thank you for inviting me this morning. I see some familiar faces. I know I worked with Bill in the past. So my name is Nestor Flores. I'm with Anne Arundel County Traffic Engineering Division. As you can see from the first slide, I'm part of the DPW. DPW has multiple bureaus. My bureau is the Bureau of Highways. We are responsible for a lot of maintenance of infrastructures, such as the payments and the plowing operation from road operations, and also the my division who do the traffic and maintenance of assets from the traffic perspective. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, I'm working for the Traffic Engineering Division. I am now close to 20 years in the county. As time goes by, I used to be the young buck. Now I'm becoming the old soothsayer, and that's a little bit scary. It's thinking I look in the mirror and say, who is the old guy in front of me? But the good thing is I've seen a lot of transitions in the county, and also I see a lot of opportunities as technology has grown, as you are probably familiar. So my traffic engineer, my division is made up of two groups. Traffic engineering office, if you want to come say hi, we're located at 2662 River Road in the county complex. As you walk into the door, look to the left, and that's where my office sits. And then we basically that office handles the traffic operations perspective. We play a role in the subdivision review, and of course we do the traffic signal design and implementations. My traffic main shop is located on the Broadneck Peninsula. If one of these days I'm gonna have an open house, you're more than welcome to come and see the cool stuff. Your tax money pays in, the pavement marking thermal truck, which we just implemented 2 years ago, and also a lot of the unique ways how we do that, right, behind the scenes. They're amazing. Those are the guys you're gonna see driving channels, putting up signs, taking care of the pavement markings, and also making sure that anything that is damaged, for example, a flashing signal, we respond in an emergency situation, and anything such as stop sign get replaced within 2 hours. Next slide, please. So my staff has heard this speech before, and maybe some of you have heard this speech as well. I asked my 3 questions, right? And some of them are pretty easy. So the first question I ask is, what do we do? And they should all be able to answer that question pretty straightforward. And we maintain, operate traffic assets. Pretty simple, straightforward. The second question, which is a little bit harder, is how do we do it? And that comes from applying traffic engineering principles, and we follow national, state, and local aid guidelines. In particular, the Bible of traffic engineering, some of you might know, is the Manual Uniform Traffic Control Devices. And by state law, we need to follow that, right? So it's a way of having uniformity through the county, through the state, and through the nation. So every time that manual comes up, the state approves it, and we are obligated to follow. So if you give me a call and say, Nestor, I want to have a special sign, I will say, well, it's in a manual. If it's in a manual, we'll make it and consider installing using the traffic engineering principle. But if not, I will say, sorry, I cannot make that sign for you because I need to follow the manual. Next slide, please. So the hard question is why, right? Why do we do this? Why do we come to work every morning? And it should not be because we want to make money. No, we can make money another which way we can, right? We can have 2 jobs at McDonald's, Burger King, whatever. But why do we do it? And the answer that I want to hear from my staff is, we believe that we played an integral part in ensuring that all traffic modes, peds, bicyclists, and personal vehicles flow through the county roadways efficiently, and most importantly, safely. So that's why we get up in the morning. That is our why. That is our just cause. And I try to have staff and members in my team to believe that. So, and as we're going to work together with the communities also need to believe that that's what we want to do. And we can get to a solution that is going to be the most suitable for that particular situation. Next slide, please. So I mentioned traffic assets, right? This is a quick snapshot of the whole county. So as you can see that as the county has grown, there's a lot of specialized traffic assets that we got to maintain. So full signals, those are the green, yellow, red that you see along Forest Drive, River Roads, and so on. We have 122. Now, take into account that we are focusing on maintaining county assets. The state, they are responsible for their own. So a quick way of differentiating between county and state, if it's a numbered road, that would be a state. So Maryland 665, Maryland 214, Maryland Route 2, that kind of stuff, okay? So as you can see, we have a lot of other traffic signals. For example, we have firehouses, we have hazard beacons. We also maintain close to 100,000 traffic signs. So, and we are mandated that we got to maintain them. So right now we use a 10-year process. So we got to be able to touch and maintain or replace a sign every 10 years. That's per the manual and federal guidelines mandates. We also maintain, we also have streetlights. Our office is responsible for handling streetlights. Half of the streetlights are county owned. We contract BGE and they maintain it. We partner up with BGE. They do the maintenance and installation for us 99% of the time. There are some special exceptions where we probably gonna have to get a different contractor, but 99% of the time, BGE does all the streetlight installation maintenance for the county. There's a quick snapshot of the different type of fixtures we have out there, right? And I will touch a little bit later on those different type of fixtures, but just keep in mind that we are moving to what is called the LED street lighting. Special pavement markings, crosswalks, stopping yields. I think at one time there was a running joke between myself and John Corn. I don't know if you know him in the bike commission. He loved to have pavement markings, and he told me, "Hey, Nestor, just paint." Well, paint has to be maintained, and that's just to give you a quick snapshot of all the different maintenance that we have to do on the special pavement markings. Arrows, you probably seen Jennifer Road with a new cycle track. All that has to be maintained. So I usually the one who puts a little bit of brakes on the excitement, but I got to be realistic of what amount of maintenance we got to do. The other thing is the Naval traffic control. We maintain some of the choker. Actually, that little box is a little bit off. We have a little bit more of assets now. Speed humps is the most known, right? But also the most controversial. Half of the people will always like them, half the people will not. Will actually hate them. So, but they're the ones who seem to be the most effective in controlling traffic. Next slide, please. So this is the asset within your region, and I will apologize for a second, because when Patrick and Desiree were making the presentation, I realized I missed an area of your region, which is the south of the river. I didn't realize that the London town area was part of your region. So it just increases the number of assets within here, right? So you can see there's 44 signals in your region, right? 39 of them are full signals. Of course, you can quickly take into account, right? Pretty quickly, you got Forest Drive, there's 12, River Road, there's 12. You already got to 24 there. And then the Best Gate and Jennifer Road quarters there also has some signals for the county. Next slide, please. So how do we get to maintain these assets? Number one, we get an operating budget, correct? So in the operating budgets, as you know, we're in the middle of budget season. Bill asked you to read his sector study to go to sleep at night, but I think if you look at the county budget, you probably go to sleep quicker. So you'll be able to find operating budget. You'll be able to see there's 2 line items if you're interested. One of them will be actually 3 line items in the operating budget. We get a budget for buying sign material, right? We do fabricate our own signs, and we need metal. We need film to put on top of the signs, and also ink. So that pays for that. I also have operating budget for buying signal parts, right? All those signals need to be maintained. And I also have a budget for the pavement markings. As I mentioned before, one of our pride new equipment is a spray thermal truck. This one basically applies a thicker material that is going to last longer, about 5 years longer. So it allows a little bit more of opportunity to maintain the long lines in a way that we can get to the to every road within 3 to 5 years instead of having to do almost every year because of paint wears out quicker. So this what you have in front of you is capital project. This is what you call a recurring funds. And as you know, the county council approves it every year. The county exec provides it. So these are basically long-standing projects that we have implemented even before I started. And the first one is a traffic signal modification. This allows us to improve primarily one signal location per year. And right now, what we're doing is looking for the older signalized location, signalized intersection, and we try to improve it per year. The second one is a new traffic signal. And this is when we do signal warrant analysis and we find an intersection that's having, for example, right angle collisions. And then we end up saying that doing the warrant analysis, we end up determining that a new traffic signal needs to be constructed. And then this will be the fund that will allow us to install. We are growing about 2 to 4 signals per year, full signals per year. And the average cost of a new signal from design to construction is around $250,000 now per year. Okay, the new traffic signal account also allows us to talk about buying new technologies. We can talk a little bit later on that. It also allows us to provide communications. Okay. Neighborhood traffic control, of course, that's what we talked about, speed humps, neighborhood traffic. That is a very popular program that we have in the county where we work with individual communities to address traffic calming, right? And not only speeding, but also cut-through traffic and those kind of issues. And we work with the community very heavily. The new street lighting is a capital project that is basically team up with the police department. And these are one of the only ways to install new street lighting in the county. The other way, of course, is through subdivision. This one basically is a community makes a request that, for example, having issues, and it starts from safety. There might be some activities that are taking place that they would like to address. So the police will review and they say, yeah, lighting is a good approach for this particular location, and we go ahead and do it. The other way, of course, is traffic safety. If we found a crash pattern near an intersection that doesn't have any street lighting, and then we find that the crash pattern is nighttime, for example, installation of street lights along an intersection or corridor will help us out to address that. The street light conversion is, as I mentioned before, was we're moving any fixtures right now who are mercury, sodium into the new technology, which is LEDs. You've probably seen them. They kind of like the fixture look kind of flat. I think there's some of them on Forest Drive already. Definitely some of them on Riva Road. And not only are the Cobra looking pendants, but also the ornamentals, they go into LED. The benefit to those are we can dim them, right? So if somebody's complaining that the light is shining into their window, we can dim them to a certain point to minimize that intrusion, and also the energy saving. The pole replacement is a similar capital project, and that one was basically as these fiberglass poles age, they bloom. And what happens is the fiberglass becomes kind of brittle, and it can be a hazard for a pedestrian, particularly if a young person touches it, it can create some issues on the skin. So we are in the process of doing pole replacement there. And the last one that I have highlighted here is the highway safety improvement capital project. We get about $650,000 every year. And that one is managed by the Bureau of Engineering, but we play primarily the leading role in selecting these locations that we want to not only study, but potentially improve to address safety, crash patterns, and so on. Next slide, please. These some examples of some of the changes, improvements we've done based using capital project money. Some engineering improvements we've done in Jennifer Road, like I mentioned, with a cycle track, right? That was a combination of using the roadway resurfacing and also using the engineers to do the design for us. South Haven Road, we did a pedestrian enhancement crossing. We also did a speed limit reduction on South Haven Road, where we use a new technology for raising awareness when a pedestrian is waiting to cross the street. Signal improvements on Forest Drive. I think Bill mentioned about the signal that we had. He calls it the smart signal. And on top of that, we added another type of technology there where it actually monitors the health of the corridor to try to see how well our coordination is working, or if there's an issue that needs to be addressed. Just a quick side note, Bill mentioned the whole coordination between the city signals and the Forest Drive signals. And one of the limiting factors has been that our product is a Siemens product, while the city controllers are Econolite. Well, we have made the decision that we're going to be moving to Econolite. So that's going to make that pretty easy to do, a little bit easier, because within the two vendors, we should be able to communicate pretty easy back and forth within the signals. And I'll reach out to the city of Annapolis to inform them. And we, by the way, we do a lot of communication back and forth with the city of Annapolis, both from the planning perspective and also from the operation with DPW. We have a pretty close relationship with them. The last section here on the streetlights is the pole replacements. Just give you a quick, input here. We have since the beginning of the pole replacement capital project, we replaced about 4,500. We still got about 7,000 or so that we need to be replaced. Of course, the inventory grows every year. Streetlight conversion, we have about 6,000 converted by the end of this fiscal year. And we have installed street lighting based on the safety component, about 3,000 streetlights. Next slide, please. This is the end of my slides. So this is, as I mentioned to you, are all the different bureaus within DPW. You can always call the customer relations number, and they will get us to the proper. If you want the bureau highways, the highways that I work for is 740-222-7321, and they'll be able to get you to any of the divisions. We'll be able to address your concerns. And that's all I have for you this morning.
Oh, I think you're muted, Leo.
Thank you. Nestor, thanks so much for making time to walk us through what you guys are up to. It's apparent that you're really quite busy, and we appreciate all the work you do to keep us safe.
Thank you very much. We're here to serve.
All right.
Leo, I don't know if you noticed there were a couple questions in the chat.
Yeah.
I can read those off if.
That'd be great. That'd be great. I did see them, but I'll let you go ahead and read them off, and maybe Nestor can answer the ones he can.
Okay, great. So the first one was who's responsible for cutting back bushes and branches that block all of the great signs? Far too many signs are not visible.
That would be a combination of my office and road operations. If it's something that is minimal trimming, my office, we all have tools to be able to clean them up and improve the sight lines. My staff has orders as they drive around. They need to be cleaning up the signs. If it becomes that's bigger than what we can carry in our trucks, we coordinate with road operations to get them cleaned up, and they'll pick up. If you have signs in your neighborhood that you see as you travel, please take advantage of the 311. That's a great way of you reporting a lot of the things. It's straightforward, simple. You just put it in. This is where we found it. You can also call my traffic mate shop at 410-222-1940, and we'll create a service request and a work order to get those cleaned up. As you know, we can't be everywhere all the time and rely heavily on your input. I joke around that sometimes funny or sometimes seriously, all of you are professional engineers, right? You got your driver's license.
Great. And then one more question about crosswalks, kind of two-part question, but what does it take to get a crosswalk signal? And then how often are crosswalks repainted?
Very good question. So right now, we just started a new asset management software in the county. And basically finally we have a GIS coverage of all my, well, now hopefully 90% to 80 to 90% of my pavement, special pavement markings, which include crosswalks. And right now we are working on basically geographical. So we just work through the county. However, I want to go into a more dynamic way of identifying, and I'm going to use age and conditions of the crosswalk so I can develop my work program every year. We started rating those crosswalks, and hopefully within 2 years we'll be done and we'll be able to implement that. So when you say you want a crosswalk signal, are you talking about maybe what I did on South Haven, where there's some, when you push the button, lights light up?
Exactly.
Okay, to get that, basically we do an evaluation, right? We do a study, and if we determine that there's a need to enhance, and the State Highway published a guideline on when to enhance crossings, and we follow that guideline. I tweaked it a little bit because, as you know, our roads don't carry as much traffic in the residential area, and also they don't carry the higher speed. But we have a process to study that. I also have under the capital project, the HSI, I am going to be studying 7 special locations, and primarily those are deal with trail crossings to enhance them. But you can call me at 410-222-7331, or you can give to Desiree or Patrick a list, and we are more than welcome to look at those locations.
I would like to just say one thing, if I may. Having worked with Nestor on a number of things from street lights to roadway conditions, I can't say enough about you and your office and staff. We've just been very pleased with with your response. Thank you.
I appreciate that. That's always great to hear. We're not perfect, but we're here to do the best we can for you.
Great. Thanks again. Appreciate the time. I'm looking at our agenda today, folks, and we're just a little bit behind here. I'm still going to ask us to take a break, and then we'll start with our transportation planning presentation. And I'm going to say it's 11:17 right now. Let's do maybe, is 11:25 too late, do you think, Patrick? Oh, you're muted, Patrick.
Yeah, I think that should work for us.
Okay. Great. So let's go ahead and take a quick break, grab a cup of coffee, and we'll reconvene at 11:25. This here.
Yeah, I think so. And I've started recording again.
Okay, great. So thanks, Patrick. So yeah, Patrick, I'll let you introduce our next presenter, and then we'll go right in.
Great, thanks. Well, I will hand it over to Brian Ulrich with the county's Office of Transportation. So Brian, if you can take it away.
Again, I'm Brian Ulrich, Anne Arundel County Office of Transportation. I'm the planning administrator over the planning side of the house, and Crystal, who's not here today, is the administrator over the operations and administrative side of the house. Patrick, if you can make me, okay, there you go. I was trying to share my screen, but it wouldn't let me. All right. Let's see here. All right. You seeing my whole presentation and the whole screen? All right. So again, this is Office of Transportation. Our director is Sam. He apologizes he cannot be here today. He is at a transportation summit for NSA, the state of Maryland, and just about every jurisdiction in Maryland, kind of within DC and Baltimore area. Talk a little bit about our functions, explain what we do. We do transportation planning, which includes all modes, and basically like what I like to call policy programs and projects. So policy level, just recommendations, programs, and capital projects to make improvements to the system. Basically, we're monitoring system performance, analyzing it, doing analysis, making recommendations, adopting those in plans or studies, and then implementing, like I said, policy changes, programs, or projects to make changes, and then seeing how well those work. So one of the big programs we have also is transit operations. We'll get into that in a minute. Capital projects, like I talked about, and then a couple other things we have. So grant management, trying to get grants to help pay for all the plans and projects and programs we have. And we're trying to move into the 21st century with some of the innovation. So from a high level, I'll try to be high level. I could probably spend an hour just talking about all the different things we have going on, but high level, we work on county specific planning. We have a transportation master plan called Mta Arundel, and within that there's some sub plans, one of which is Walk and Roll. The county's bicycle and pedestrian master plan is currently being updated. Walk and Roll is the new plan. It's out now, or in process now, and we'll get into that a little bit later. We're also just kicking off our transit development plan, which is our 5-year short-term transit planning document, required as a recipient of money from MTA. And then there's some other subcomponent plans. If you've been around, you may have heard of the MIF, the Major Intersection Important Facilities, which included Forest Drive. We also have a Vision Zero plan that's being finalized. I'm not sure if it's been finalized as of yet, but it will be finalized shortly. Sets the framework for it's our safety plan, with a vision of 0 fatalities. And then we'll have more work coming out of that. We do facility planning studies, kind of quarter studies. We help OPZ long range with the region plans, the town center plans, those kind of things, the transportation element of that. And then we have these kind of programs, you know, transit oriented development, zero emission bus and electric vehicle, trying to shift both our fleet to all electric, but also help everyone with the infrastructure necessary to go to electric. We have connected and automated vehicles, which is connected vehicles is just those that talk back and forth to transportation assets, such as the signals or other new technology that can talk to each other and talk to other cars. And automated is just self-driving cars, which again is emerging technology. I have impact fees and APF. We don't actually play a role in development review. That is a different group. I don't know if you've met Margaret's group in the Office of Planning and Zoning, but we do from a policy level of how much money is needed for the projects that we have planned. What is the cost of improvements? That kind of thing plays a role in APF and impact fees. We also do the regional planning. So we're the liaison for the region, the Baltimore Metropolitan Planning Organization. If you don't know what an MPO is, it's just a federally mandated group of governments that decide how to spend the federal money in the urbanized area. We're part of the Baltimore urbanized area. And so we have a long range plan, a short-term work plan, and a lot of other federal requirements. We're part of the board, and we work with the staff closely. We also do other regional planning efforts, such as the Central Maryland Regional Transit Plan, I should say transit plan, which was again kind of a group of Maryland counties and City of Baltimore trying to look at regional transit coordination. And then also local jurisdictions individually. We work together as part of the MPO, but direct coordination with City of Annapolis, City of Baltimore on different projects. City of Annapolis, you'll see some projects we'll talk about in a minute, but City of Baltimore, we have the Greater Braybrook Connector, some transit things, Howard County, same thing, border bridges with PG and Howard. So a lot of coordination goes on between our offices as well. And then we're again the liaison with Mdot. So making requests, their annual planning update, master plan, their transportation plan, bike ped master plan, transit plan, highway safety plan, and then just operational requests, improvements, close coordination, both with headquarters and the local district. So that's from a high level, kind of how I broke out what we do. Transit operations. The county has 45 revenue buses with 8 fixed route lines. So fixed route, in case you don't know, is just run the same route over and over at certain times. We also have 1 micro transit zone, or I guess there's 3 zones, but 1 service in South County from 214 South, basically, where you just call and schedule a ride. They'll come pick you up and take you somewhere in that zone or connect you to Edgewater to get onto the fixed route transit. Paratransit, which is for elderly and disabled. It's again kind of a on-demand service. And we also partner with RTA. We're a member of RTA, I guess, us, Howard County, City of Laurel, and PG County on regional transit services. And then we also have a contract service with BWI Business Partnership to offer a kind of run-of-the-mill shuttle called the County Connector. Here's a copy of our updated fixed services route. This year, we implemented 2 new connections. It's still not easy to get around the county with transit, but at least now you can actually get around the county with transit. We have a Crofton Express, which I think hits Wauchapel, Crofton, and then to Parole. And then we extended the Gold Line, which used to go up to College Park, all the way up to Cromwell. So now you can at least make it around the whole county. The headways are not great, so it will take time and transfer vehicles, but at least you can get around the major parts of the county. Again, we have existing micro transit in South County, but we're looking at creating these other zones for the different areas. And this way, the entire county, you'll have an option to take transit. You'll make a call or schedule an appointment to go take micro transit. It will connect you to a fixed route location, whether it's us or the state. And you can then continue your journey from there. Or if you're just traveling within your zone, you just go from point to point. We're developing an app, which we'll get into a little bit later. Again, paratransit. Here's some information on this. This is for elderly and disabled. We dropped the age again, I think, down to 55. It was 55 for a long time, then it went up to 60, now it's back down to 55. Here's the Mta Regional Services. Again, we have 2 passenger rail services. We have a light rail service, or say we, the state operates it through our county. And then commuter bus and local bus, all within the county, operated by Mta. And so we try to coordinate services, plan together, and also assist with stop improvements. Project side, so we have the county capital budget. We do what is called the expansion projects. DPW does the maintenance projects for transportation. We look at providing expanded transportation infrastructure. And part of that is corridor studies or some other studies within that program. It's not just building things. We also have coordination with, say, central services. There's a Odenton Mark Garage is one of the projects. We've got the Pearl Transportation Center. So some other maybe non-traditional transportation projects that may or may not be located within the roads and bridges section of the capital budget. We coordinate closely with Rec and Parks on the trails. We use their trails a lot of times as our bicycle spine network. And then again, part of the state and region requirements, the federal requirements require all your federal spending to be shown in a TIP, which is kind of their version of the CIP. And then also the state has federal rules as well. We draft the annual priority letter to make recommendations or requests for project spending from the state. There's a Chapter 30 scoring analysis, which is required by the legislature to show how the projects we submit are scored compared to other counties in the city of Baltimore. And again, the state has federal guidelines on showing federal expenditures in their short-term spending plan. Just a quick highlight of the capital projects in the Region 7. I think I hit them all, but there might have missed a couple. Here's the key ones I would say were Pearl Transportation Center. I know we had a question on that. We can take questions when I get done. That would be located at the mall. That's under design now. Forest Drive 665 intersection improvements. That's been on the priority letter as a request from the city of Annapolis for several years, maybe since I've been working here. We are finally moving forward on something. We're working with the state and the city, looking at alternatives to address some of the issues there. A new project that's been proposed is some bike improvements near the Naval Academy Bridge, kind of to connect the BNA Trail to the city of Annapolis, and will ultimately connect to the county South Shore Trail, which heads west from the Parole area. Jennifer Reed Road Shared Use Path, some other projects you can see, Riva Road at Governor's Bridge Road. I am also a Region 7 resident. I live in Riva, so that's across the river. So don't lose sight of that in your discussions. And some other little smaller projects you can look at there. And the state does have a sidewalk retrofit project. I don't know how easy it is to find out public information about this, but it's from Defense Highway to Route 2, Solomon's Island Road. They're looking at going back and kind of filling in some of the missing pedestrian infrastructure to get you from the Annapolis Town Center area over to the mall, besides just going under the 50 overpass with that shared use path. So getting you to the mall side. I did see a question on the paratransit. The paratransit is free. I think we are one, if not, we used to be one of the only paratransit programs that was free. Sometimes that plays havoc with our scheduling. We get some cancellations because there's no penalty for scheduling a trip and then not taking it. So it did affect some of our service quality. But where our fixed route transit is also free now. It's free with the pandemic, and so far we're keeping it fare free as well. Let's go. Grant programs. Again, we try to raise funds. There's impact fees, there's bonds, there's general fund from the budget. There's grants. We try to defray the cost from the county. There's a lot of grants that we can get both for transit operations, but also projects, studies, programs. And I'll just note that federal earmarks are back. We, in the past, I don't know how long ago it was, we did have an earmark for some of the trail improvements. Earmarks are back, and we got an earmark from, I think, Anthony Brown for converting our fleet to electric vehicle. And so we submitted again this year for more earmarks as well. So I think that's going to be key in getting some of the larger improvements that we need is getting some of that federal money. Some innovations. So we are working on we have a transit app now. I think it's called Transit App. We have a new website. We're working on an app for the call and ride service. We'll still keep the phone. All you'll do is call a call taker, and they'll enter your information electronically into the app. And what it does is it routes trips and makes it more efficient service. Some of the other things you can see that we're working on, if there's questions, we can highlight it, but electric vehicles, electrification, EV grid, trying to update things like automated people counters, USB charging, Wi-Fi on all buses, kind of move into the 21st century like we talked about. And then there is, we're exploring ferry service. We're joining with several other jurisdictions and doing a study on ferry service. I don't know if you've heard the county executive talking about that, but that is also underway or just beginning. I believe we're signing an MOU. I think it's signed. I don't know exactly when it starts, but we'll be starting that soon. But for the region plan, what we're looking for you guys is we have a lot of transportation improvements planned in our master plan. So prioritizing those, as well as we have these plans under development, walk and roll, which is the bike ped master plan and the transit development plan. So you'll be seeing public outreach and information coming out. And if it would be good as a SAC, if you guys weighed in on those and helped us prioritize things. We had planned as a agency, I guess, to update the functional classification maps. There's a lot of areas that need to be updated. We did a little bit of kind of minimal, obvious updates with the GDP, but there's plenty more cleanup that needs to be done. And then we've got some other things I'll get into here in a minute that we can maybe help on the planning side. So again, real quick on the functional classification map, this is the current functional classification map. Principal arterials in red, minor arterials in green, collectors in blue. And with the update, we'll be cleaning some of this up, making sure the roads are classified correctly. Based on how they're used is the current functional classification system. There is a new industry standard to move towards not so much how the trips are used, because for example, Route 2 Solomon's Island Road, you'll have a mix of people going through all the way to go up to say, from Edgewater to Vernon Park or Edgewater to get on 665 to go to DC or Baltimore. But also local trips from, just to go up to, I'll say Harbor Center and go shopping or something like that. So the use is not always consistent. And so there is a trend to go is, what's the land use around it? What is the desired speed and activity in the area, and format your roads for type of land use in the area, maybe boulevards, avenues, main streets, that kind of thing. So that's something we have discussed about looking at from a change, would be a big change to our functional classification map. So that's something to consider if you guys have thoughts on that. We have access to some big data, vehicle probe data. I did a quick bottleneck ranking. You'll see the MPO does a bottleneck ranking for the MPO area, the Baltimore urbanized area. And, as you can imagine, I-95, 695 are the top bottlenecks. I did a kind of quick one for the Region 7 area for 2021. You can see there from January 1st to December 31st, the whole year, every day. And surprisingly to me, maybe, I don't know about to you, Riva Road from West Street, I think it's from Forest Drive to West Street, or maybe it's just at the West Street intersection, was the #1 most congested segment of road. West Street is second, 665 is on there, Route 2, but Chinkopin Round Road's on there. So to me, some interesting results. I will say that it depends on when you do it. What my boss was talking about, I-97 and all the traffic that he was, going through to get to work. He lives, northern part of the county, comes down here to Annapolis. And if you run the whole year of 2021, still, pandemic is changing some of the travel patterns. That section of I-97 was not identified as one of the top. But if you ran it from the last half of the year, say September to December, it actually was the #1 congested in the county corridor. So it is time dependent. You can go back, 10 years. You can go back to any particular day or segments of days or Fridays or Mondays. There's a lot of data in there that you can play with that we can look at to analyze, congestion within Region 7 or how it compares to other areas in the county as well. So that is a cool tool that we have. Again, on the higher level of commuting kind of information, I just printed this out again to do real quick just to kind of show. This is the LEHD data. There's some employment data. There's some I won't say inaccuracies, but it's high level. Again, we talked with the Fort Meade area. Your job might be in DC, but your actual office is say at Fort Meade, or it could be north of the airport. But depending on where your home office is, your job location may be somewhere different. But so this looks at high level. Where are people coming from and going to? You can see 57,000 people are coming into the Region 7 area to work. 20,000 are leaving and 10,000 stay within the area. So just order of magnitude, even though it is a job center, there's still more people leaving this area to work than stay. And then this, again, you can do some analysis on where they're coming from, whether it's zip codes or census designated places. This is the top 10, I believe, zip codes, but still, if you add up the top, I don't know, whatever's on that screen, 8 there or whatever, it's still not, most of the people are still coming from other areas as well. So again, it just shows you how spread out the distribution of where people are working in Annapolis are coming from. So these are tools that we have that we can help to prioritize improvements and give you information if that helps you. Walk and roll. We have our bike ped planner here, Tanya. I don't know if she wants to give an update, but we're in the middle of it. We've done all the public outreach for input. We're in the process of developing the plan, and we'll be coming back out to show the adopted plan or the draft plan and take comment one more time before we take it to council for adoption. So be on the lookout for that. And again, we would like input as well. If you hadn't had a chance to provide input, please do so.
Brian,
Yes, go ahead, Tanya.
I just wanted to say I did put the link to the webpage for Walk and Roll in the chat. And I wanted to remind everybody that the interactive web map where you can drop a pin or draw a line and make comments right into the map, and as well as take a survey, is still open, but it is closing May 27th. So if you haven't gone and taken a look at that, please do. We've had about almost 1,000 responses countywide so far into that map. So it's been very, very useful in helping to formulate the network in that map that you see in the top right corner.
And we also have the TDP, the Transit Development Plan, which is underway or just kicking off, really. So that'll have public opportunity as well for comment for transit needs, if you guys would like to weigh in either individually as a group as well. But that's the high level takeaway from the Office of Transportation and what we do and how we help you guys during this region plan development. So I saw there was some stuff in the chat. Let me see if I can look it up. I saw the fees, 97. Okay. I believe right now, the only thing I saw on 97, they did some shoulder work, and then they're also doing some resurfacing. There is discussion we've had in our long range plan to add kind of either HOV lane or some kind of managed lanes to add capacity to 97 without trying to induce, a lot more development and encourage more traffic that just then fills it up. So kind of peak hour capacity or HOV or something. The state indicated they are looking at using shoulders during peak hours to accommodate rush hour traffic. We are waiting to see what their final recommendations are as kind of their TSMO approach, which I didn't discuss, but TSMO is just from a high level is using the infrastructure you have to the most efficient. The era of more highways and large expansion projects is over, or we don't think it's going to continue. So what existing infrastructure can you use better to get more efficiency out of the system? Parole is designated as a development area, can expand on Parole Transit Center. So Parole Transit Center is just a transit hub connecting. It acts like that now. There's a lot of local routes and then a couple regional routes that hit the mall. And so we're trying to build a facility that expands the capacity there that could handle more buses at one time and can provide more routes, more expansion, and also a waiting area for people. So that is under design. It's programmed in the budget. I think it might be funded in the allocated for FY23 to fund all the money for the project. So that's under development. I don't know if you have more questions about that. If so, just jump in. I'll keep going.
My only question 97 is I saw it called out in the letter that we reviewed that was in the materials. And that traffic is always really brutal where all the traffic merges coming from Annapolis up into Baltimore. It starts at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You also have it at like 7:30. And so it's always a choke point. I just wanted to ask if there's any real improvement to that, any adding of lanes, or is it just consideration to just deal with the traffic?
No, that's what I was talking about, the managed lanes. So maybe not just a normal additional lane, but say HOV transit, or again, it could be peak hour running in the shoulders to add that third lane north and south just during peak hours, but not during normal operations. So it would be adding of lanes of some sort is what our request is. And the state is kind of reviewing that request and supposed to be coming out with their recommendations soon.
because, you know, we were tasked, at least to go out and talk to people in our area about, you know, issues for the county. And for my transportation discussion, like at least everyone that I work with in the contractor and in the professional community, everyone just hates that drive getting up 97 to the airport or to Baltimore. It's just impossible to plan. And so a lot of my comments were, hey, can you ask about this? Is this a state dictated work or is it by the county? Like who's making the decisions on this?
Well, the state maintains the facility. I-97 is a state maintained facility. So is US 50, 665. Again, like Nestor said, those numbered routes. So they're ultimately in charge of what gets done. The county asks annually for I guess the state says, what is the county's priorities? So in the priority letter, the county puts together, hey, this is the county's priority. This is what we want you, the state, to spend your money on in our area. So we do make the request to make those improvements again through the regional plan. We've got improvements on 97 in the regional plan as part of the long-term plan. And in order to get any federal money, which often is the case needed for these interstate projects, you need to have it in your plan. It needs to be in the plan to get funded. So it is in the plan.
Is there a timing on it? Is there something that you would like us to share? Pat, is there something we should share with our people that we're talking to about this? Or is it just, it's in the plan and leave it open-ended?
No, I mean, I think, you know, advocating for the improvements that are important to you is important at all levels. I think even sometimes after you think it gets added to a list or something, if there's not continued public support for it, sometimes they can drop back off the list. So if there's an improvement, whether it's this or any other improvement or, you know, more money for transit or whatever your, you know, focused need you think is, advocating both in the local and the regional level to make sure that they know that the public wants that improvement is important for everybody, both as a commission and as individually, I think.
For the parole transit center, is it just to create capacity for buses, or would there be parking there to encourage people to come park and then take transit?
So there is a plan for a small parking area. Obviously, there's a lot of parking at the mall also. So we're looking at trying to make it more, you know, extend some bike paths and some sidewalks to make it attractive for area residents to walk and bike there. You can also drive and park there. And it's not the regional bus service is still right now out of Truman, but you can connect both to Truman and Parole, so you can park at either place and hop on. So there will be parking, and there is parking, and there will be additional parking. It's not a substantial amount of parking, but the hope is to if you're going to take transit, maybe not have to rely on driving to take transit. Maybe we can improve the transit to get you to the mall to take the regional routes.
Eric, this is Leo. I just wanted to ask you again. I know the city's looking real hard at their transportation and connectivity issues, and my understanding is that the city is looking to feed directly into the multimodality connection at the mall. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. Our limits end, you know, well before the mall, so it's a tricky situation. We coordinate with the county on all of their transportation planning. We participated a lot in the parole mobility study, which was last year, I believe. You know, everything that happens at the edge of the city is definitely in our interest. So we have Annapolis Transit would be going to that multimodal transit center. It currently uses the mall as a major hub. So, I mean, to answer your question, yeah, we do coordinate quite a bit. And Brian mentioned this idea of better bike corridors in the vicinity of that transit center. And that is a major a major goal for the city is to connect to Waterworks, which is that large 600-acre property that the city owns in the parole area. It's not really well connected currently. So, we'd like to see that be kind of like a central park for, parole as it evolves, and there's more residential around it. And, but it needs better connections, along Bestgate and Housley. And I know the county has, I think, the matching funds for those in their budget currently. So.
Great. Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it. Brian and Tanya, thank you as well. And I'm going to encourage everyone to take a look at the link that Tanya's put in the chat to contribute on the walk and roll component. Is that right, Tanya?
Yes, that's, like I said, it goes through May 27th. This is, if you wanted to view the presentation that we provided, we did 3 in-person meetings, and we kind of coupled the regions together. We did one for 4 and 7 together a couple of weeks ago at the Heritage Office Complex, but we also had a virtual meeting for those that couldn't make it to any of the in-person ones. And that presentation has been added to the Walk and Roll webpage under, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see a link to it. And that just gives you sort of an idea of what we've done so far, where we're headed. We don't have a draft plan yet, but we plan to have one sometime in the summer, and we'll take it back out to the public then.
Great, great.
And I would point out, if I could, a lot of the links, the studies, walk and roll and Arundel, the Vision Zero draft plan. If you pull up the background information that I sent out to you all of those links are in there. If you want to, as you're pondering some of this information that you've heard, and if you want to go revisit and dig a little bit deeper into any of these things, you have those links there.
Yeah, that's on page 4 for those who haven't had a chance to take a look. They're all just highlighted, so you can just click and go from those. I imagine you did that, Desiree. Is that your job? Yeah.
Patrick did it this time. I did.
Oh.
I did it this time, but.
Gotcha. Yeah, they're really helpful links. So I'll encourage you guys all to take a look at that. I know everyone's real busy and it's hard to read all the information, but as we get into our own planning and strategy sessions, it's important to have this background information, and it is a nice opportunity to contribute not just to this group, but like the walk and roll is a nice opportunity here that we've just been reminded of. Patrick, I'm going to try and get us to move forward. Again, thanks to our presenters. We appreciate that. Now, I think we have, if I'm not mistaken, another meeting. I think we are squeezing one in June. Is it the 14th? Is that right, Patrick and Desiree?
Yep, June 14th. I'm going to be sending out, I'll set up the Zoom link, hopefully correctly, and not send out for the wrong date, but it will be June 14th. I apologize for doing that last time. Yeah, so look for that shortly, hopefully today or tomorrow.
Right, and what we're going to try and do there, as I recall, is try and maybe start the discussion about the information we've received so far.
Yes. Yeah, we'll have some facilitated discussion and start to think long-term about what are the needs and how do we start to address them at the region scale.
Yeah, and just start to piece together what we've been hearing and what we're taking away from what we're hearing. These are spots that we could maybe start to target things to change. Some need to be broadened and some might want to be restricted, but we'll start that discussion at this point on the 14th, and Patrick and Desiree will work through an agenda, and they'll help guide the discussion, if I understand correctly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Great. Is there anything else we need to discuss today? Is there any open items people want to bring to our attention? Okay, so I'm going to assume that, the chat is working great. So thanks for everyone for chipping in there. And Brian, thanks for answering the questions that came up, and Tanya, you too. With that, I'm going to make a motion that we adjourn. Do I have a second?
This is Tony, a second.
Okay, Okay, judging from the 4 seconds I have, I'm going to say that it's that we're all set. So everyone have a great week, and thanks for coming to join us. And if you have any more questions, you can reach out to me or to Patrick or Desiree, and we'll see what we can do. Have a great day, and appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.